How you guys doing? This is Isaac, Programmable Audio, back for episode 7, Mix with a Newb. I've got my new Droid Cam setup going on here. So this is my phone being used as a camera extension. Figured I'd give this a try. Looks like a slightly better quality. At least I think it's a better angle. I can look directly into the camera. It's not so awkward. So let's get started here. For you tonight, what I want to cover, real briefly, what I want to explain is, this is episode 7. When I get to episode 10, we're going to publish. We're going to go live with the channel and put everything out. So you should be able to watch all 10 episodes at once. And then I'll continue making them after that, and going up to, who knows, potentially 20 episodes. So the format of the video, what I'm planning to do is a mixed topic, which will be sort of a general topic that should apply to any mix, free of any software or plugin centric advice. Something you could do on any software in any setting, a kind of a universal concept. And then I'd like to also couple that with a Reaper feature. And before this I've been saying plugins, but I realized that I'm probably going to run out of default plugins, the stock plugins, that is, the ones that came with Reaper, and especially the the Reaper suite of plugins. So just to not limit myself to specifically a single plugin per episode, we'll say a Reaper feature alongside a general mixing topic per episode, just to clear that up. So tonight, what I'm going to show you is the mixing concept will be ducking items using, I guess technically it's considered side chaining. So we're routing from one track to another, and we're using the feature that we're going to use. The Reaper feature is FX modulation. So let's get into it here. What I want to do, and this is a common thing that you'll hear about or read about, is the kick drum and the bass drum fight each other. They have a hard time sitting together well in the mix unless you use some EQ and some tricks to make them play nice. And the reason is that they both occupy very similar frequencies at the low end. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my plugin, my FX channel for each. I'm going to open for the kick bus. It's going to be here on the left. And for my bass bus, it's going to be on the right. And if you go back to episode, starting to lose track of the episodes. It may be the previous one, episode 6. Did we mess with EQ in that? I believe so. So the previous episode, we threw some EQ on each of these, and we just used the stock, what we call these default. It does say stock. Interesting. So it's a stock default setting, and somebody programmed these in here. Someone who has an idea of what EQ curves should look like and wanted them available. And I will repeat my advice. You should feel free to use the stock ones because they're there. It's awesome that someone put them in there, but you should always tweak from there. You should always take whatever the person felt was a good EQ curve and move it to the taste of your mix, to your ear. All right, so tonight, let's begin with some automation. So what we want to do, first I'm going to let's solo the bass and kick by themselves, and just listen for a second. Now it's kind of hard to tell just by listening, and I'm sure if you're on your laptop, if you're on your phone, it's almost going to be impossible to tell, to actually hear what I'm talking about. The next thing I'm going to say, which is these two things are stepping on each other in the low end. Not horribly, because they're already EQ'd, and they're EQ'd well. So what I'm going to do here, if you look at this point number 2 on the bass, it's 100 hertz. So that's the frequency, and it's got a gain boost of 2.9. So every time the bass hits at 100 hertz, we got a lot of signal coming through. Well, we look here, 50 hertz is boosted on the kick, and at 100 hertz, okay, they have this, let's see, they have this number 2 point disabled for this setting. We can enable it. So at 100 hertz, the gain is at 0. So the kick, there's like a gentle slope here between 50 and 100, and these sort of cross each other. There's going to be a little bit of issue there because this bass at 100 hertz is going to squash, is going to step on the kick. So what we want to do, the first thing we need to do is create a send and change the channel on it so that we can sidechain. So what the goal here, oops, that was kind of cool. All right, the goal is to send the signal from the kick to the bass and use modulation to take that signal and affect this EQ. Okay, so the first thing, like I said, we need to make a send. So I'm going to do the quickest and easiest way that I like to do is just like this. And again, I've shown several different ways in my previous videos. The one difference here is when this pops up, you want to change this to do the drop down here. This shows you audio from channels 1 and 2 to channels 1 and 2 on the receive, but you want to change these receiving channels to 3 and 4. Okay. Now we come over here to our bass bus, and the tricky thing with this, you have to kind of wiggle this. It's a little awkward how it works, but if you just move this up and down a little, and then I'm going to hit Control Z to undo it. Then you go to parameter, P-A-R-A-M, param, and we do this parameter modulation / MIDI link. Okay, now, before you proceed, read the top part here, just to make sure that you did in fact grab the one you want to affect. Okay, parameter modulation link for gain band alt 2 / re-EQ. Okay, so this is correct because it's the gain, because I wiggled it up and down. Now if I wiggled it left and right, this would probably say frequency. So let's try that. I'm wiggling it left and right, which is changing the frequency. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo it. Oops. That should go back right to 100. We know it's 100, so let's set it back to that. And parameter modulation again. Okay, so here's how it changed here. If I could make this bigger, I would. I know this is going to be tiny. If I can zoom in post-production, I will. So now it's changed to frequency. So once we set this up, it's going to actually modulate the frequency of that, which you could use later for something to make some kind of cool effect or something. I've never messed with that. I always do gain because that's kind of what we're aiming for here. All right, so we're gonna wiggle this up and down. Parameter modulation / MIDI link. We're gonna do audio control signal and then in parentheses sidechain. Okay. Now we have the little drop down here, and remember how we changed that to 3 and 4? We're gonna select that. When I hit the space bar, I should get signal here. There it is. All right, and it's already working. The thing is, our settings, you can see how this changed from a boost up here to it's down all the way at the bottom. It's got negative infinity gain. So what that tells us is that these default settings have put that node down there, and that's not what we want. So let's start tweaking the settings. So this here, this is the first one you want to mess with, baseline value. Okay, so our baseline value, to be honest, we want to put this to exactly where the default was. And you know what? I don't remember. So the easy way to do this, we're going to reset this to factory default. Excuse my voice. Getting a little frog in my throat there. All right, so band rock bass. This was gain of 3.8 at 100 hertz. So, and it still held on to it. I wasn't sure if it was going to hold on to it or not. So we'll set that back to 3.8. We drop down here, and now we have settings like you'd find in any compressor or any other kind of traditional plugin. Attack. How quickly does this plugin turn on? Release. How quickly does this plugin release, let go of the signal? Minimum volume. I believe that's if you want to have a sort of floor where you can kind of, it almost acts as a gate, the threshold on a gate. Max volume, same kind of thing. Puts a ceiling. And the strength of it. Now, from my experience, the strength is one you're going to want to change, and then the centered and negative. I believe we're going to want to set this to negative. And let's go ahead and put the strength down real low, and we'll creep it up as it plays. So here we go. Okay, you see it starting to wiggle? Watch over here. Okay, I'm dragging here. I'll put it close together. So I'm going to continue dragging the strength. We're at 20% now. Huh. Okay, it's barely wiggling. All right, so let's put it all the way to 100 just to see what it looks like. Okay, that's pretty good. It's ducking, so it actually physically looks like it's ducking, right? It's like the head of a little guy and it's ducking down. That's where the term comes from, ducking. All right, I'd like it to duck more than that. And in fact, let's see here. Let's change this baseline volume. Well, I'm not sure why I'm not getting any signal right now, which is really strange. Okay, this graphic on the right is cool too. It gives you an idea of how much you're affecting it. Now, this release I think might be too slow, because you want the bass note to return in between those kicks. Those kicks only last; they're very short. A couple of times we were measuring the transient of kicks. You know, we can go measure one right now. That's the freedom of being a noob. You can go in and do whatever you want. All right. Let's measure the length of one of these typical kick hits. And we'll just go till it's almost completely decayed. Because there will be a little tail over here, but we're not going to worry about that. And this will kind of give us an idea. We'll do two things. So I'm measuring the length of this kick hit, and it is 75 milliseconds. And then let's measure, let's see here. These look like two really close ones together. So that's about 43 milliseconds. And let's look at how long after the initial transient cluster. Well, there's only one transient, but the initial peak, this initial hit, does it almost completely decay. So like 17 milliseconds. So let's try that, just to try it, because you want the bass to swell back up after the kick squashes it, makes it duck down. You want the bass note to come swelling back into the mix so that you're hearing it. If you just set this so that the release isn't fast enough, your ear will begin to lose bass, and you might as well just lower the volume on the entire bass. All right, so okay, this gets tricky because you have to make sure you've touched this again, and then you go back to parameter and see how it's checked. It tells you that it's active. So there's the screen again. All right, and what did we say? 17. This seems like a slow attack too. So I'm going to hold down control again because it's hard to get exactly to 17. But if you hold down control on any slider or twist knob, it will fine tune. So this lets you do big movements, and then holding control lets you drag and just go one at a time. So we're going to do a really fast attack time too. In fact, we'll set them about the same. So that's quite extreme, and see how I have it set to centered, and that's why it's flopping up and down like that. I don't want it centered. I'm actually going to go negative. I'll see. I'm gonna bypass this by unchecking this box, and this will be kind of an experiment. I'll listen in my car later on my phone. I'll listen through the default speakers on my computer, and we'll see if it in fact does anything on a smaller speaker. Here we go. Bypassed. Enabled. So right now, while it's enabled, those kick notes should be coming through nice and crisp, and the bass should kind of lose some of its rumble just briefly to let those kicks pass through. When I uncheck this in a second, you might just hear the bass just stepping all over the kick. So let's hear it. Bypass. Still in bypass. Is the kick stepping all over the bass? Might be. Sounds like it to me. And again, it's only because I've heard the sound of it before. I know what it sounds like. Essentially what it sounds like the bass, it sounds like the bass is too loud in the mix. On these headphones, I get plenty of the bass at the low end. So really, it sounds like there's a imbalance in the volume, and it's a really strange conflict down that low. It really comes through in a car. If you listen in your car and you have a decent set of lower speakers, I mean, they have to be, probably the stock 7-inch ones are fine for most vehicles, the ones that are sitting in your door. They'll produce enough low end that you'll hear what I'm talking about. It's real subtle. The next thing we can do, the way I kind of like to finish this is there's another plugin that I'm going to talk briefly about, and that's called XComp, Re-XComp. So we're going to throw that on here. So again, in the filter, I just type REA, and I get all my Reaper, the Reaper suite stock plugins, which are amazing. I've been mixing almost exclusively with them, which I'm proud of, but I do want to branch out. At a certain point, I need to branch out, and I know that. All right, so the nice thing about this is we don't have to reset up that routing because this bass bus is already receiving on channels 3 and 4, but you do need to grab a hold of the parameter, whatever part of the effect you want to modulate, you have to touch it. You have to wiggle it around and move it, and then hit parameter, modulation MIDI link, and it's going to be the exact same. You just audio control signal sidechain. You change this drop down to 3 + 4. Make sure you're getting signal. There's signal. If you have your routing off for some reason, nothing will happen here. This will just be dead. Okay. And again, we have our settings are off, so this is just completely crushed. And that's probably producing, yeah, that makes a really interesting sound. That completely neuters it. That should be fairly obvious, especially like I said in your car. If you have some lower end speakers to listen on. All right, let's change the strength of this. Let's switch it to negative. Oh, and our baseline value. Essentially, I just want this kind of giving it just a little touch. I don't want it going nuts. And the way you can tell with Re-X Comp now, I should mention, this is just a multi-band compressor. It has compression, just like we talked about in Recomp, but it lets you pick multiple bands, and that's why they call it multi-band compressor. Band meaning a frequency, a band of frequencies. So here I can actually tweak it. What I want to do, what I'm going to do here, and this will tell you the range when you have this drag. So this is 20 to 99 hertz. Okay, at negative 19 dB. It's going to tell you some of the settings as you're adjusting this, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to extend this out to about 150. All right. So the bass signal is going to be compressed as it's getting the kick signal coming in. Now, again, I think my attack looks fine. 15. This release needs to be much faster. We'll try that 17 again. I think we're going to need to go a little more than that. All right, so you can tell this is working when you get the little yellow readout, and it juts down between the two green. These are your 2 meters. I'm not getting anything yet, so let's change. I'm going to change the baseline value. Negative. No, that's too far. Okay, there. It's just kind of touching it, just kind of giving a little kiss. Give me a kiss. Oh, you know what? I was. This is funny because I thought I was messing with the parameter modulation. Hey, we just had another Newb moment. I think this will be part of the videos. Newb moment. If you have 2 things open like I have open right now, be careful about which one you're actually affecting. I was changing the attack and release on the compressor. Oh man, that is funny. Thinking I was changing the attack and on the on the modulation. So what that means is I kept looking for the thing to change, for the band to change, and nothing was happening, and that's because I'm a noob. Oh, it's funny. So, and the problem is the attack is much too fast. At 300 milliseconds, your attack, it's barely going to get any of your kick hits, okay? Because kick hits do not last 300 milliseconds. It's just not, they're tight, they're short. You know, we measured them a second ago. We're talking 75 milliseconds, you know, done by a tenth of a second or something, you know. All right, so now you can see it's going kind of crazy. We don't want that. I think it's because I had my strength set up too high. And all right, here we go. Now we're getting somewhere. See, I'm dragging the strength up, and it's, so there's a certain point where it just goes, it's just way too much. And let's go a slow, quicker release to here. All right. See there, now it's just kissing. It's just kind of bobbing up and down with it. It's ducking it. All right, so we've affected the frequency of it. We have it ducking. This should still be working. I wonder if there's something about of only being able to use one frequency modulation. I wonder if I need, let me see here. Maybe what I need is, this is so weird. Oh, it's because I bypassed it. Another Newb moment. We had 2 in this video. Yeah, yay, Newb moments. Okay, Newb moments are awesome because they let you learn. That's how you learn, okay? As long as you catch that you did that thing. So 2 Newb moments was I had this bypass so we could hear it, and I didn't enable it again. And then on this one, I had the plugin open and I had the modulation open, the modulation dialog box or whatever you want to call this, pop-up box. And I was making changes to the compressor itself and thinking it was changing the modulation settings. And I was waiting for this to start jumping the way I wanted it, the way I'm used to. I'm over here messing with this, going, what is going on here? So those were the two new moments. That was awesome. I'm going to unsolo these and listen to the mix now. Whoa, those vocals are, yeah. They're okay. They're just like, sometimes they're right in your face. Okay. Okay, all it does for all that work, all it really does is it lets that kick cut all the way through. And it's a low end thing. It really is. You can do exactly what I did at any frequency for anything. You can have other examples in places I've used this and seen other people use it is you can have when the vocals are kind of spiking in a certain area, you can have the guitar duck so that the guitar moves out of the way in that frequency for the vocals. You can have the snare. This is one I frequently use that I like the sound of. When the snare hits, you can have the snare duck the cymbals so that the cymbals are moving out of the way for those intense snare hits. So that's it for tonight for episode 7, Mix with a Newb. I'm the Newb. This is Isaac with Programmable Audio. Thank you for watching. Just a quick recap. We covered ducking, making items duck their frequency or output signal duck using sidechaining. And the Reaper feature we covered was parameter modulation. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. I promise to make you more videos. We'll have a bunch of more new moments together. And hit like on the video if you like it. And feel free to leave me a comment. I would love any kind of feedback I can get. Negative, positive, I'll take it all in and I'll do my best to make the videos better. Thank you for watching.